Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill, and yep, I'm back out in the vegetable garden today. One of my favorite vegetable crops to grow is green beans, both bush beans and pole beans. So today I'm going to show you how to start them from seed, how to transplant them out into the vegetable garden, and I'm going to talk about awesome supports for pole beans. Beans are really easy to start from seed. It just depends on whether you want to plant the seeds directly in the garden or if you want to start them indoors ahead of time. But the important thing you need to know is that they should not be out in the garden until the danger of frost has passed. So here in my Zone 5 garden, that would be about mid-May or later. But I like to start mine indoors for two reasons. One is I get really great germination because of the controlled conditions indoors, and also because we do have a lot of birds in our garden that love to peck on freshly sprouted seeds. If you would like to get the best possible germination, I have a tip to share with you regarding planting bean seeds, and it all has to do with seed orientation. If you look at a bean seed, it's kidney-shaped. It's quite a large seed. And at the center of that inner curve is a scar, and I like to call it the belly button of the seed. And that is where the seed sends a root down and a sprout up towards the soil surface. So it's very important that that little scar or belly button be facing downward. Now, if you think about a seed as being a little packet of energy, it needs to use that energy to send that root down and the sprout up. But if the seed is upside down or in an odd position, it uses that precious energy to orient itself. And a lot of times it uses up that energy and it will die before it officially sprouts. So that is really frustrating and a waste of seeds. So let me show you what that looks like on the seed itself, and then we'll start planting. These are Spanish musica seeds, and of course they're white, so it's a little harder to see that belly button or scar, but you'll notice there's something right at the center of this inner curve, and here it is on this seed. That's what you want to face down. For starting bean seeds, which have quite a large root system even in their early days, I like to use a flat insert that has a good sized cell for each one. This is a deep root insert from leevalley.com that I bought years ago. It's very sturdy, it holds up well, and it accommodates those large roots. Now, bean seeds need to be planted an inch deep. I've planted all of the seeds, one per cell, and I made sure that the scar side or belly button side was facing down. Now, on a side note, I know that a lot of folks will think, gee, that's kind of tedious to have to do that. But really, most home gardeners don't plant that many beans, so it's really not a problem to spend a few extra seconds orienting the seeds properly. I grow 72 bean plants, and I'm very willing to spend that extra time so that I know I will get great germination. The next step is to finish filling in each cell so that the seed is covered. Once that's done, I like to water in the seeds well. This is a bottle top waterer that I got years ago, also from Lee Valley. It comes in a set of about 4. And boy, do these work well. You just put them on the end of an empty pop bottle, and it's a very gentle mist for the seeds. An extra step that I like to do is to sprinkle a very light layer of finely milled sphagnum moss over the surface of this soil. And that is to prevent damping off syndrome, which is a nasty fungus that can kill a whole flat of seedlings very quickly. It's a natural ingredient, so I'm not using anything that isn't organic, and it works really well because I've never had damping off syndrome affect any of my seedlings over the years. So that's the next step. Now it's time to place a clear plastic lid over the flat. But if you don't have one, that's okay because you can use a large clear plastic bag. The point of using either a lid or a bag is to increase humidity because that's what's going to help the seeds germinate or sprout. So now I'm going to move this to under my grow light and wait for them to come up. Well, it's been a week and the bean seeds are up, which is really exciting. But they don't get to go in the garden just yet because there's a very important step to do next. It's called hardening them off. Let me explain what it is and why it is so important. Hardening off is a process you go through to acclimate seedlings to the intensity of the sunlight and temperatures in your garden. When you think of it, the light inside our homes isn't anywhere near as bright as the sun, right? And the temperatures indoors are pretty mild too. If you take a seedling that was started indoors and just plant it right out in the garden, it will get sunburned. That might not sound like it's so terrible, but for a plant it's awful and potentially deadly. The leaves will turn white and the plants will either struggle or die. You don't want that, right? Here's what you do over the course of a week. On day 1, you put the plants outside in filtered light for 1 hour, then bring them back indoors. The next day is for 2 hours, then back inside. The third day, leave them out for 3 hours, with them getting stronger sunlight each day. By the end of the week, they'll be used to how strong the sun is and be ready to plant in the garden. This hardening off process applies to all seedlings that you start indoors. Yes, it's a little bit of a hassle, but so worth it. If you're growing pole beans, it's really important that you provide them with a good structure to climb up on. And it should be at least 6 feet tall because the vines grow like nobody's business. And it's also important to put the structure into place before you plant your seedlings. That way you don't accidentally decapitate any of them when you're moving the structure into place. So always put the structure in place first. Now, many years ago, I had one of those aha moments. I was standing out in the hot sun, harvesting beans from a little teepee, and it was hard to see the beans, and I was just dying in the heat. But it's what I had to do. And I suddenly thought, well, what if I planted them on either side of a pathway, on some sort of a support, and maybe the beans would hang down on the inside, and maybe I would get to stand in the shade while I'm harvesting them. Well, it just so happened that the very next spring, a local store had these for sale in their garden center for 50% off. So instead of being $50 per arch, they were $25. That was reasonable. I bought 4 of them, and this has been the coolest structure ever. It's very strong. The beans do hang on the inside for the most part, and I get to stand in the shade inside this arbor while I'm picking. It's awesome. So this is a wonderful kind of support. But let me show you one other type of support that's a little less expensive. If you're familiar with cattle panels, which are also known as livestock panels, you know what this is. So we went to a farm supply store and we bought 2 of them actually for this structure. They are 4 feet wide, actually 4 feet 2 inches. They are 16 feet long. They're galvanized metal so they won't rust. They are extremely sturdy. And they cost roughly $20 to $25, so much less expensive. And we just trimmed off part of the end, the last one of these cross pieces, so that we would have some spikes to push into the ground and make it stable. The other thing we did is we took a heavy-duty fence post that we already had and pounded it down at the middle of each panel on the outside, here and here, so that it wouldn't bow outward. Now I'm actually going to grow some small melons and winter squash on here, and probably some cucumbers, so they're not getting the beans, but I did want to show you this as an inexpensive alternative. It's finally bean planting day, and I wanted to share a really important tip with you about transplanting seedlings. When you are ready to remove a plant from the container it was grown in, it is so important that you don't just grab it by the stem and pull it up out. That's because your pressure on that stem can either break it or it can crush the cells in the stem, which makes it difficult, if not impossible, for it to transport moisture and nutrients. So it's much better to take either like a slot screwdriver or a chopstick and then just slide it in along the outer edge of the container, on the outer edge of the root system, and then just lift it up so that you can pull the plant out. And there we are. Look at that root. So be very gentle with your seedlings. When it comes to planting bean, pea, or corn seedlings, what I like to use is a tool called a dibber or a dibble. And what it does is it creates a cylindrical hole which works perfectly for the bean root system. You certainly don't need to have one of these tools. You could definitely use a trowel and then just push it into the hole and press the soil around it so that there aren't any air pockets around the root system. Pole beans can be spaced about 3 inches apart, and that's because they're going to grow up and not out. Once all of your seedlings have been planted, be sure to water them in well to get them off to the best possible start, and do water them regularly throughout the season. When it comes to harvesting beans, make sure you pick them frequently while they're young and tender, because first of all, they'll taste the best, and second of all, the more you harvest, the more the plants will produce. So those are all of the important things you need to know about growing beans, whether they're pole beans or bush beans. Happy gardening!